Hello again, everyone. Griffinlobster. Well, congratulations. You made it. You sat through hours and hours of me going on and on and on about my 90 almost favorite games of all time, and yet here we are, without further ado, in the top 10. You made it. You've earned it. Well, unless, of course, you just skipped to this video. Part 10 of my 10 by 10 extravaganza. This is it. The creme de la creme. My favorite games of all time. These 10. Well, at least for now, until next year when I change my mind and this list becomes obsolete again. Most of these games are not going to require too much of an explanation, so this may be a relatively short video, but who am I kidding? I like to go on and on, as has been evidenced by the past 9 videos, and as is being currently evidenced by this overlong introduction. So, let's just shut up and get to not shutting up about games. Here we go. The top 10. Number 10 is Bloodborne. Dark Souls, for me, has been sort of a second renaissance for action games. When I dipped my toes into the series, it really opened up an entire different way for me to look at games. Obviously, the difficult combat is there, but the oppressive, atmospheric game world that draws you in, that makes you want to discover its mysteries and travel its undulating and circuitous paths to find every little nook and cranny, find all of the loot, find every little piece of lore you can get. And I love those games. But for me, I think the atmosphere that those games go for, that dark fantasy, is taken to sort of a dark extreme with Bloodborne. The weird mystery of the Dark Souls worlds is taken to an extreme in the even weirder, darker, stranger, more alien, and as you progress through the game, more progressively alien world of Bloodborne. And for me then, that means that Bloodborne is Dark Souls turned up to 11. They take away the shields essentially, and it's all quick dodges and parries with your firearms. It's just the game sped up to 11, intensified in terms of the feel of the game, the darkness of the game. It is the perfect marriage of the style of gameplay I want out of the games with the game feel of the world. And for that, I have grown to love Bloodborne more and more and more with each passing year. I play this game at least once a year, try a new build, try a new weapon out, and it's never not a blast. I have parts of this game down like the back of my hand. I could practically play through some sections of this game with my eyes closed. Well, maybe not. The game is still pretty hard and still finds ways to pull the rug out from underneath me, even though I've beaten it or gotten to the end several times. And it just keeps bringing me back for more. And I'm not really sure what it is. And I think a lot of the magic of these top 10 games is hard for me to put into words. And I'm encountering that here with Bloodborne. To someone who doesn't feel the same way, it just sort of looks like an overdark, weird Bram Stoker wannabe with some Cthulhu stuff sprinkled in the further you get into the game. And that's a fair read of the game. It just is. But for someone who has played the Souls games, has really enjoyed and loved the Souls games, then to apply sort of a different theme to it that almost fits the gameplay even better is just beautiful for me. Darkly, twistedly beautiful, but beautiful nonetheless. It also has what is, in my opinion, with the Old Hunters DLC, the very best bit of Dark Souls content available. Some would argue that this isn't really a Souls game because Souls isn't in the title, but I mean, let's be honest here. The Souls games have essentially created a new genre, the Souls-like genre. People create wannabe games left and right. And there is no better Souls wannabe then, if you don't call it a Souls game, than Bloodborne. I just completely love it. The weapons are a whole heck of a lot of fun to use. There's fewer of them, right? And maybe there's fewer build options as well. But every weapon feels like it is tailor-made to be as fun as possible. There's a weapon in this thing called the Kirkhammer, which is a fast-paced longsword. But then there's this gigantic tombstone on your back that is also a scabbard for the thing. And all these weapons are called trick weapons, so they all have 2 modes. And the second mode of this is you jam the sword into the scabbard, tombstone, pull the entire thing off your back, and now you have this huge hammer. And you just wallop foes to death with that thing. And that is just one example of the many crazy, out there, ridiculous, fun weapons in this game. So, fun, atmosphere, and weirdly brilliant and engaging in a way that is hard to describe. And I think that's going to be a theme through a lot of these games. And that's pretty much all I have to say about it. It is a beautiful game. I love Bloodborne. And for some people, it might be a little hard to love because of how dark it is, how hard it is. But for those of you who can go push past that learning curve, that very steep learning curve, I think you'll find something very special indeed. I hope so, anyway. Coming in at number 9 is Banjo-Kazooie. This was number 8 on my list in 2008. And this is just, for me, basically the premier N64 3D platformer game. There's a lot of them on that little system. And while I think, Super Mario 64 maybe did it first, and some would argue that Banjo-Tooie took a lot of the stuff from Banjo-Kazooie and sort of honed it and made it better, this is the one for me that just was sort of a marriage of it all. It is colorful, it is goofy, it is fun levels, fun music, just everything about it is just made with the pointed intent focus of wanting the player to have as good of a time as possible, have the biggest smile across his or her face as possible. And you just can't help but love a game that so clearly wants you to love it so much. And the levels in this thing, the characters in this thing, the dialogue is hilarious. I love the banter that Kazooie brings up with all the side characters. Grunty's rhyming even has its charms to it, which they dropped in Banjo-Tooie. And I love exploring the castle. It feels big without feeling too big. Admittedly, now it feels considerably smaller, but mostly because of the way games have progressed and because I've played it so many times and just know the castle like the back of my hand. But the fact that a game can still feel rewarding and fun your 15th, 20th time through it, when you have it memorized top to bottom, means that it's just something special. When you know a game front to back like that and you still can find something to enjoy in it, that's something special. And Banjo-Kazooie has that in spades. Well-loved by the Let's Play community, well-loved by the speedrunning community, and well-loved by me and many of my friends. Banjo-Kazooie is, for me, again, the premier 3D platforming experience on the N64. Please check it out if you have not. Coming in at number 8 is Super Mario World. This was number 17 on the list in 2008. And it belongs in the top 10. Look, right? I mean, for many people, this is their favorite game. It's another one of those sort of no-brainer entries. It is, for many people, if it's not their favorite game, it is, in their opinion, the very best 2D Mario platformer, or just the best 2D platformer. And that's a very fine read. Now, admittedly, there is one Mario platformer I like just a little bit more. I wonder what that could be. Not trying to spoil anything, but I wonder what that could be. Super Mario World, look, the level design is great. The music is great. I feel like I'm going to be hitting a lot of the same buttons over and over again here. But it's another one of those worlds that's just consistently engaging, charming. I like the flavor of each individual world. The first time discovering Star Road was awesome. Like this entire second, deeper secret world that I felt like when the first time I stumbled upon Star Road as a kid, I was like, wow, I just blew this game wide open. And then the fact that there's another special world nested even further in, aptly named Special World, the first time I discovered that, I was like, whoa, I am the best Mario player. Of course, nowadays Special World is pretty blah. Everyone knows about Special World, despite the fact that it has awesome level names, like Tubular. But Super Mario World is just the summation of so many ideas. Yoshi is probably the best Mario power-up in the history of the franchise. Despite the fact that my real loyalty in terms of 2D Mario platformers lies elsewhere, I will freely admit that Yoshi is a brilliant addition to this game and adds so many extra play opportunities. Even though they sort of decreased the overall number of power-ups, having Yoshi and all the different ways you can play around with Yoshi and the different colors of Yoshi really opens up the game big time, opens up the feel of the game. Almost feels like a different game when you're playing as Yoshi. Playing with Yoshi, I should say. So, yeah, Super Mario World, I don't need to defend it anymore. It belongs here. Let's keep going. Number 7 is BioShock. This was my number 11 game in my 2008 list. I mean, that was really only been out for a year, you know, so I wasn't sure if I loved it if I was sure that I loved it as much as I did. But sure enough, here it is now in the top 10. BioShock is one of my favorite games ever. I play it, I don't want to say every year, but almost every year, maybe every other year. And for me, this is 100% game world. A lot like Bloodborne, but also has a lot of fun in it, lots of variety in it. Also just like Bloodborne, that oppressive, atmospheric, dark world where you feel as if everything is out to get you. Beacons of hope are always far in the distance and come by rarely. You always feel as if you're a step or two behind the antagonist, Andrew Ryan, who's jeering at you the entire way. And the way you progress through the world, the way the odds feel stacked against you, but the way you slowly build your arsenal of tools to increase your odds. You get another gun. Maybe you have multiple different kinds of ammunition for that gun. You piece together a bunch of little scrap pieces to make more ammunition, to make new weapons, to make new plasmids and gene tonics. Gene tonics are like passive abilities that you can slot in and out of your character to increase your character's abilities in one direction or another. And then you have your plasmids. You fire and fire and bees and lightning out of your hand. It's just never not fun, right? You feel like a superhero in a world full of supervillains. And the way that it draws you in, the way that every combat encounter feels like you have so many different options, so many little levers to pull, so many ways to play with the game world, it always draws me in. It's always a whole heck of a lot of fun. That atmosphere, again, I'm going to keep going back. Fort Frolic in particular, just this twisted, strange, macabre, effed up world. And getting further and further in, there's that awesome twist about 2/3 of the way through that I still hope is not spoiled for you if you've never played BioShock. Please go back and play it. It might look a little dated, but in terms of first-person shooters, you're not going to find one out there that delivers as unique and as flavorful an experience as BioShock, I don't think. So there you go. Coming in at number 6 is Resident Evil 4. This was 5 on my list in 2008. Resident Evil 4 is, for me, the premier survival horror experience, still to this day. Admittedly, one could argue that it goes a little bit off the rails near the end of the game in terms of that horror atmosphere. It becomes more of an action game near the end of it. And a lot of people point to Resident Evil 4 as the starting point for the entire Resident Evil franchise going off the rails, first with 5 and then to a worse extent with 6, a game that many people loathe because it is just all-out, balls-to-the-wall, nuts, shit, craziness. And that's fine. I mean, they tried out some different flavors. I don't resent those games as much as some people do, but and I certainly can't resent Resident Evil 4 just because, I mean, the first time I played this thing, I just played and all of a sudden it was like 3:34 in the morning, and I was like, I have to get to bed. And I think once again, it's that game world, that atmosphere, the way that it draws you in to this believable quasi-zombie Central America, this other world that you slowly walk into and get deeper and deeper into. It starts during the afternoon, and you're in this village, and a few zonked out villagers start attacking you, and then you go to the village proper, and then there's a bunch of crazies, and there's a chainsaw guy, and then all of a sudden it's night, and you're in a cabin, and they're coming at you from all sides, and then you're in this gothic castle with these robed cultists, almost, singularly focused on your demise. And as you get deeper and deeper and deeper, you begin to get more and more suffocated. You fight the regenerator enemies, which are some of the most effectively scary and off-putting enemies in the history of the Resident Evil franchise. And the fact you keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And eventually, yeah, it does go a little off the rails, like I said. But I think for the way that it builds its game world, for the way that it manages to make, I mean, most of the game is an escort mission. You have Ashley with you. You play as Leon Kennedy. You're tasked with rescuing the president's daughter, Ashley. And you have to kind of hide her, mind where she is. But the fact that the game never really feels annoying, because I think escort missions are one of the hardest types of gameplay conventions one of the hardest types of gameplay conventions to make fun. And the fact that it does that with flying colors and with relative ease, is something impressive, I gotta say. That ought to sell the game to you alone enough. But I love the guns in this thing. I love the enemy variety. I even love organizing all of my inventory in my carrying case. They sort of ditched the, you can only have 6 items or only have 8 items, and that's it. And your stack of ammo takes up 1 slot. Your rocket launcher takes up 1 other slot. They swapped it out for a much more tactile and appealing and sensible inventory system where you have a grid and certain items take up different amount of space on the grid. So that's all. I mean, honestly, I have fun just rearranging my inventory in this game. If you can have fun rearranging your inventory in a game, then that means that you have something good. And Resident Evil 4 is something very, very good. I love it. All right, coming in at number 5. Here we go. Top 5. Coming in number 5 is Chrono Trigger. This was number 4 on my list in 2008. Chrono Trigger is essentially a perfect game, and I think that is almost all I really have to say. It has excellent RPG gameplay, probably the best soundtrack in video game history still, one of the best game worlds in video game history, the fact that you can see the world from a bunch of different ways, the fact that there are so many endings depending on how you traverse through the game world, what kind of things you check off on the list, where you visit, when you visit. This game also has time travel in it. And time travel is like one of my favorite little topics in games and in media in general. Back to the Future is my favorite movie, for those who didn't know that. But it's just that perfect marriage of Squaresoft and Nintendo coming together, making the greatest RPG of all time on the greatest console of all time. It's a match made in heaven. And you can play it on an SNES emulator if you can skirt Nintendo's vicious ROM hogs, or you can play it on DS. I just implore you to go back and check out this gem if you haven't. It gets to be pretty forever because it has some of the best sprite graphics in history still, even nowadays when people are still making sprite games. This is one of the prettiest sprite games still. And I think the dialogue is great. The world is great, the mystery that unfolds, and as you sort of peel back more and more layers in terms of what's going on here, you think that there's this one true protagonist, but actually you're fighting against sort of the apocalypse itself. One of the first timelines you go to in the game is the world post-apocalypse, and you see what a depressing, broken world it is. And it's sort of revealed to you throughout the course of the game that you get to change that turning point in history when the apocalypse arrived, essentially. And to put that on your shoulders, to task you with that, feels inspiring to this day. And the music helps a lot, too. The music cues in this thing are perfect and on point and excellent. I love all the party members in this. I love the tech system. I love the magic system. It's just a fun game to play, too. I think it is, it's a turn-based ATB RPG, so tried and true. You've probably played hundreds of games that have turn-based RPG with ATB in it. But for me, this is the time and place where it really felt at its best, at its most relevant. No random encounters in this thing, either. Well, I think there are a few. There are like trigger areas you go to where enemies sort of swing in, whatever. But it's just perfect. It's just a perfect game. And so perfection wins my number 5 spot, apparently. Anyway, coming in at number 4 is Portal. This was number 6 on my list in 2008. Portal is, for me, just like, it's like dessert or something. It's something you can enjoy relatively quickly. And I could beat Portal in probably in like an afternoon. It'd take me like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to beat Portal. Shorter if I was really rushing through things. But the fact that such a small piece of game, such a little nugget of a game, can be so engaging still to me. That is, I just love GLaDOS and the interaction she has with you, and the way that sort of deteriorates over time. The way that the game approaches its very, very simple story of just, you're going through a test chamber, you're doing all these different tests in a row, and then there's this stupid, goofy betrayal, but the way that the game plays it, like, with kind of a straight face, but with a little hidden smirk, it's just perfectly executed in terms of humor and in terms of game world. It's simple, but it goes for this certain feel and it nails it to a T. And I think other games have sort of tried to go for this smirking, constantly watching feel before. Since they've tried to go for this kind of thing. One game in particular that springs to memory is this game called Quantum Conundrum. I'm not sure if anybody's ever played that, but you can tell that game wanted to be Portal really bad. It's a first-person puzzle game with sort of a smirking, wisecracking, omnipresent voice in it, but doesn't come nearly close to the subtle brilliance that is Portal. Getting to play around with portals, it's just such a fun toy. Just a fun toy to play around with in the games. And I think a lot of people sort of like Portal 2 better because it expanded on that idea, made it a full-sized game, fleshed out the game world, added a lot of more fun new characters, and I respect that opinion. I love Portal 2. I love it to death. But for me, Portal is the game that opened the way for Portal 2. So for me, it is a game that I can constantly go back to and just jump right back into and play again for the 100th time and still have such a fun time with it. And that closing song, right? Am I kidding? Are you kidding me? Has there ever been a more perfect closing credits song to a game? I think not. Portal is beautiful, wonderful, perfect, pristine, and is a constant reminder to me that Valve needs to get off of its sorry ass and make video games again. Please. We need more games like this. We need you to show us the way towards creativity like this again. Please, we implore you. Okay, now we're in the top 3. Coming in at number 3 is The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. This was number 2 on my list in 2008. Yeah, right. So, Ocarina of Time, right? We knew a Zelda game was going to be in the top 10, and the way this list has been going, I think Link, you have showed up more than any other character on this list, I believe. Mario would be the only one to give you a run for your money. And look, Ocarina of Time is timeless, magical fun. It is a game that is completely imperturbable to me. I can go back, and even the parts of the game that are annoying, like the water temple, are just still fun. It feels like home. It feels like I'm getting in my pajamas, becoming 12 again, going back to my parents' basement every time I play Ocarina of Time. And I think it's just the way that the game approaches revealing the world to you, the way that it deals with the otherworld mechanic. There's time travel in here again, an old favorite of mine. And the way that it slowly sort of builds the stakes, the way that its dungeons slowly sort of ramp up in complexity and difficulty as you get through them. And just the game's charm and occasional darkness. It is a game that I love to the depth of my person. And I think it came out at the perfect time in my life when I needed to go on an adventure like this. I needed to see the world that Nintendo was able to create with the tools that they had. And I know I'm not alone. For many people, this is still their absolute favorite Zelda game. For many people, it's still their absolute favorite game. And you got to blame nostalgia a little bit. We're going to be coming back to that here shortly, of course. And that's a lot of it, sure. But there's a game design here. There's a love here. There's an intent. There's this adventuring spirit that it brings out in me still. Despite the fact that I've played the game 20 times, coming back to Ocarina of Time feels like going on an adventure in a way that no other Zelda game does still. So I think this game is, yes, it's a nostalgic pick to put it here, but I think it's also an honest pick. It's still a relevant pick. It's a game that I could pick up and play any day, and have a blast. Ocarina of Time, I love it deeply. Okay. Mouth getting a little dry. Sorry about that. I started this list by saying that that I'm a man deeply motivated and driven by nostalgia. And that's true. But nostalgia can only get you so far. Perfection can only get you so far. And so for that reason, my second favorite game of all time is Super Mario Bros. 3. This is... Thinking about Super Mario Bros. 3 is like thinking about my childhood. It's like thinking about video games in general. To me, Super Mario Bros. 3 is video games. It is the game that sort of started it all for me. Watching my cousin play it on his NES, I was drawn into its simple, colorful graphics, its charm, its music, its difficulty that was just perfectly paced, just a perfect, smooth ramp. Occasionally, it'll even get a little bit easier, just to sort of show you a new game mechanic. And the fact that it's constantly interested in twisting its formula up, adding new power-ups, world after world. The first time you go into World 4, and everything's huge. I mean, that level's super easy, but it's just fun that the game gets to like take a break for a second, because World 3 had its difficult moments, right? The game sort of takes a break and is like, here's just a fun level for you to play. Here's like the fun mechanic we're going to be playing around with this world. And then maybe next level will get a little bit harder again. And obviously, the warps and the secrets in the game, discovering those. There's plenty of secrets on top of just the warp whistles. But discovering like a quick way through the game, I mean, the first time I found out about that, I was like, whoa. It was like my first encounter with like secrets in a game. There is so much of what gaming means to me that is packed into this little beaut that it was, for me, for the longest time, my favorite game ever. In 2008, it was my #1 game. And I think, I'm not even sure if it still isn't. It's definitely the nostalgia pick, right? I mean, this is a game my dad and I bonded over. I was always sort of chasing the progress he made in Super Mario Bros. 3. He was always just a little bit ahead of me. But I think, I'm trying to remember if he beat Bowser first or if I did. But I know he got to World 8 before I did. And I remember seeing him get to World 8 and I was like, whoa, this is the darkest thing ever. This is it. This is the big finale. This is the conclusion. And the fact that the game was able to wring such an epic feel, so many different emotions out of its simple sprite graphics and level design, it's perfect, right? I've been throwing around that P word a lot, especially lately here, to sort of land on why these games are where they are. But I think Super Mario Bros. 3 is perfect. I'm not sure if it's, for many people, the most perfect. Doesn't even make any sense. 2D platformer, for a lot of people, they like the World better, but for me, this is like the first one that just nailed it completely. And it nailed me to video games. It started the inseparable bond that I have enjoyed with video games ever since the first time I played this. It's just magic, and it's still relevant, and I can play it anytime, just like Ocarina of Time. And it's timeless, and it's perfect, and it's nostalgic. But sometimes nostalgia isn't enough. Sometimes perfection isn't enough. So I think, to borrow the words from Albus Dumbledore, a change of decorations is in order. My favorite game of all time is Psychonauts. This game was number 25 on my list in 2008. So I think it's sort of interesting that, unbeknownst to me, back in 2008, I started a Let's Play of what would eventually become the game that I called my favorite game ever. So why is Psychonauts my favorite game ever? Well, I think it's because it sort of gets past nostalgia and perfection and hits me somehow even deeper. It engages me on an intellectual level. Its approach to level design, the fact that each level is the literal brains, the emotions, the secrets of a person, and the way that it transforms that into level design is brilliant to me. I'm in love with that idea, enraptured with it still, all these years later. I think it is brilliant. I think it's inspired. And the fact that it also sort of wrings some truly emotional moments out of the mental struggles that some of these characters are going through is surprising to me, and shouldn't feel earned in a game this cartoony, this goofy. It engages me on a humorous level. This is the funniest game I've ever played. It is constantly funny, from beginning to end. Resolutely funny. Stubbornly funny. It is riotous. And for those willing to really explore, this game has an insane amount of dialogue. I mean, actually maybe clinically insane amount of dialogue. There are entire pages of conversations you could completely miss out on just by not going to the exact certain area in the camp in the exact right game state. You know, you finish basic braining, the campers move around, they have several new lines. Maybe you do one other thing, the campers move around again, they have a bunch of new lines. It'd probably take you hours just to listen to every line of dialogue in this game. And all of it is worth listening to. This camp is populated with like 16 or so of these campers, and they're all goofy and quirky and funny in their own way. They have crazy character design too to sort of complement that, and they're all lovable. Every single one of them is lovable or hateable, or you hate to love them or love to hate them. And that goes for the campers as well as the adult characters in this game, as well as the crazy people in the asylum that you eventually get to later in the game. It also engages with me on a mental level. It engages with me on a tactile gameplay level. This game is a whole heck of a lot of fun to play. As soon as you get levitation, which is sort of like this special jumping and floating ability, it just becomes a blast to play around with that and just get around the world. And a game that's just fun to get around in is a game that's absolutely excellent in my opinion. It's just great gameplay. It's not perfect, admittedly. There are a few, especially near the end of the game, a few missteps in level design, parts where it begins to feel a little frustrating, a little unfair. But I think the fact that this game can sort of bust through the fact that it's definitely not perfect, the fact that I haven't been playing it since I was a kid, the fact that it can bust through both of those reasons, both of those barriers, and still mean so much to me, is why it earns its spot here as my favorite game ever. But more important than the mental and the physical way that it engaged with me in my soul, in my heart. I don't know what it is. It's like these maverick game developers broke off from the sure thing that they had going over at Lucasfilm, and Tim Schafer, who's as a developer has become more maligned here lately with his constant Kickstarters and whatnot, and that's a whole different topic. But the fact that he got this motley crew together and just got to be as creative as possible and make a game that he believed in, that speaks to me so well after all these years, is something special. I wrote a college paper on this game. Yeah, there's no other game I wrote a college paper on. I think about it constantly. I play it just about once every year. I am psyched out of my mind for its sequel, of course, obviously. I put down a frankly embarrassing amount of money into that Kickstarter for Psychonauts 2. I don't want to discuss it, but that to me, so that was like when I was okay with spending that much money on something I couldn't actually physically touch. That was when it sort of dawned on me that, you know, this might be it. This might be my number one. And here it is, me finally admitting to it. So, I mean, nostalgia isn't enough. Perfection isn't enough. Psychonauts is my video game soulmate. It is my digital twin. It is a game made for those who are deeply weird, patently unserious, and easily charmed by high concept stuff. And that's me. Psychonauts is me. In a way. And for a game to show me to myself like that, to turn a mirror on you and be like, this is the game for you. And for a game to do that and to speak to me so deeply and to still speak to me as an adult and will likely speak to me for years and years to come, that's why it's here at number one. So, there it is. There's my 100 favorite games of all time. You made it. We're done. That's it. Finito, kaput. Video games are awesome. I hope that you got something out of this. I hope that you enjoyed hearing me ramble on and on and on, even this video now, almost 35 minutes. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. And I hope it makes you think about what your favorite games are and makes you thankful for all the time that you got to have playing these games. Makes you thankful for even having the ability to play games. Because let me tell you, my life would be a very different place indeed if it weren't for these 100 gems and for 100 plus others that I enjoyed, but this didn't make the cut. So, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for making it this far, for listening to me ramble, and for listening to me sort of just wax poetic about things that I happen to like. I happen to like a lot. So, that's it. Please sound off in the comments. Tell me what your favorite game of all time is. I want to know. In terms of the future of this channel, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I don't know. It's been a long time since I made videos. Admittedly, making these videos felt pretty good. I like doing it. I like connecting with you guys again. Sorry I've been late responding to all the comments. Your comments have been great. They make me want to do this again. And it means a lot. It really does. So, thank you so much. And I'll speak with you again next time, whenever that may be. So until then, love you guys.